Some people plan holidays, they book flights, they reserve hotels, sensible people. I, it seems, am not one of them. The idea hit me like a rogue pigeon. Why not walk across a few countries? It sounded simple, it sounded adventurous. It sounded, in hindsight, completely bonkers. My feet, bless their naive little souls, had no idea what they were in for. They were probably dreaming of soft slippers, poor, unsuspecting feet. They were about to get an education, a very long, slightly damp education. I announced my grand plan to my friends. Their reactions varied. Some looked concerned, very concerned. Others just laughed, loudly. One asked if I'd finally lost my marbles. A fair question, I suppose. My Aunt Mildred sent me a lifetime supply of blister plasters. That was thoughtful, or perhaps a subtle hint. My dog just wagged his tail. He probably thought he was coming. Sorry, old boy. This particular brand of foolishness was a solo mission. He gave me a sad look. I felt a pang of guilt. The day arrived. I stood at my front door. The adventure had begun. The first border loomed. It wasn't a grand archway, no trumpet sounded. It was more of a shed. A slightly sad-looking shed. It had a droopy flag, a very droopy flag. I approached with a confident stride, or what I hoped looked confident. Inside it was surprisingly tidy. There was a man. He had a magnificent mustache. It was a truly epic mustache. It deserved its own passport, that mustache. He looked up from his newspaper, slowly, very slowly. He picked up a stamp, a very large stamp. He seemed to enjoy its weight. He eyed my passport, then he eyed me, then my shoes. Interesting shoes, he mumbled, or grumbled. It was hard to tell. He asked my purpose of visit. Walking, I said. He raised an eyebrow. The mustache twitched. Just walking? He inquired, as if this was the strangest thing he'd ever heard. Perhaps it was. People usually drove, or took a bus, not just walked, with a rubber duck. The questions continued. Odd questions. What is your favorite color of cheese? He asked. I paused. Was this a trick question? Yellow? I ventured. He nodded, solemnly. Welcome to country number 1, let's call it Pastryland, because, well, the pastries, they were everywhere. And they were strange. I saw one shaped like a teapot, another looked suspiciously like a badger. A friendly badger, thankfully. I tried one. It was filled with something green, and slightly fizzy. An acquired taste, I decided. A taste I probably wouldn't acquire. But the locals loved them. They ate them for breakfast, lunch, and probably dinner too. Apart from pastries, Pastryland had other quirks. For example, it was apparently illegal to wear a hat indoors on a Tuesday. Only Tuesdays. I learned this the hard way. In a small cafe. A very small cafe. The owner, a stern woman with even sterner spectacles, pointed at my hat, then at a sign. The sign was in Pastrylandish, but her glare was universal. My hat came off. Quickly, very quickly. I wondered what happened on Wednesdays. The national sport was also unique. It involved rolling wheels of cheese down a hill, large wheels of cheese. People chased after them at great speed. Sometimes people tumbled. The journey to the second border was eventful. I got lost twice. Once in a field of very tall corn. It was like a maze, a green, rustly maze. The second time I followed a butterfly. It looked like it knew where it was going. It didn't. I ended up by a duck pond. It was a nice pond, but not a border. My map, which I had finally acquired, was proving unhelpful. It seemed to show places that didn't exist. Or maybe I was in a place that didn't exist. This border was different. No shed this time, not even a droopy flag, just a small faded sign. And chickens. Lots of chickens. They were everywhere. Pecking, clucking, staring. They seemed to be in charge. One particularly bold rooster stood on the sign, like a feathered monarch. He eyed my mismatched socks with clear disapproval. My fashion choices were not popular with border poultry, or anyone, really. It was becoming a theme. There was a guard, eventually. He emerged from a small hut, yawning. He looked surprised to see me, as if visitors were rare, especially visitors on foot, with a rubber duck and questionable socks. He spoke no English. Section 5. Navigating nature's little jokes, rain, mud, and a very determined badger. Nature, it seemed, had decided to join the fun, or perhaps mock my efforts. The sky opened, not a gentle shower. Oh no, this was a deluge, a biblical downpour. My waterproof jacket revealed its true colors, which were apparently very absorbent. I was soaked. Instantly, my boots filled with water. Squish, squelch, squish. Every step was a tiny, miserable symphony of wetness. My rubber duck, however, was having a lovely time. Then came the mud. glorious, sticky, all-consuming mud. It caked my boots, it splattered my trousers, it even tried to steal my shoes. The path became a slippery, treacherous bog. I looked like a mud monster, a very tired mud monster, who smelled faintly of damp dog. I slipped, I slithered. I may have uttered a few choice words, the kind Aunt Mildred wouldn't approve of, the kind the mud probably understood. Wildlife encounters were also part of the package. I met a squirrel. It had an attitude. It chattered at me indignantly, as if I were trespassing in its personal forest, which, to be fair, I probably was. Then there was the badger, a very determined badger. Section 6, more quirky discoveries. Country B and its affinity for tiny hats. Country number 2, let's call it Tinhatonia, was full of surprises. Their national obsession? Tiny hats. Not for people. Oh no, for everything else. I saw a dog wearing a tiny sombrero, a cat with a miniature bowler hat, even a lamppost sporting a jaunty little fez. It was delightful, and deeply perplexing. Where did one even buy a fez for a lamppost? I made a mental note to investigate, if I ever dried out. Tinhatonia also had a unique approach to public transport. The buses were never on time. Ever. But nobody seemed to mind, they just waited. Patiently. Sometimes for hours. They'd chat, they'd knit, they'd put tiny hats on nearby pigeons. It was a masterclass in Zen patience, or perhaps they just had very comfortable bus stops. I, with my schedule of walk until tired, found it baffling. My internal clock was screaming, theirs was napping. I learned about a local festival, the annual Synchronized Spatula Flipping Championship. Yes, you read that correctly. Teams from different villages competed. They wore elaborate costumes. They flipped spatulas, in unison, to music. It was mesmerizing, in a very specific niche kind of way. I didn't understand the rules or the scoring. Section 7. Border number 3, the invisible line and the highly suspicious goat. The trek to the third border was through rolling hills. Very rolling. Up, down, up again. My legs felt like overcooked noodles. The scenery was beautiful, if you ignored the burning sensation in your thighs, and the persistent feeling that you were walking in circles, which I might have been, just a little bit. My map was now more of a suggestion than a guide, a very vague suggestion, covered in jam stains. This border was the strangest yet. There was no building, no sign, no chickens, just a fence, a rather dilapidated fence, and a goat, a single, solitary goat. It was tied to a fence post. It was chewing thoughtfully. It looked up as I approached. Its eyes were yellow, and deeply suspicious. Was this the border guard? Was I supposed to show my passport to a goat? The rulebook on goat-based customs was unclear. I stood there. The goat stared. I stared back. It was a battle of wills. The goat blinked. I took that as a sign, or maybe it just had something in its eye. Section 8. The perils of international pedestrianism, lost socks and found friends. The cumulative effect of all this walking was becoming apparent. My feet were no longer feet. They were a collection of blisters, held together by plasters, and sheer willpower. I had lost a sock somewhere in Tinhatonia. Just one. Now my mismatched set was even more mismatched. It felt symbolic of my general state of disarray. I was a walking, talking monument to poor planning and damp socks. Yet amidst the discomfort, there were moments of kindness. A farmer in country number 3, let's call it Goatlandia, offered me a lift, on his tractor. It was very tempting. My legs screamed yes. My pride, foolishly, whispered, no, you're an adventurer. I politely declined, and instantly regretted it, as I watched the tractor trundle off into the distance, carrying what looked like a very happy sheep in a tiny hat. Obviously, the strangest thing I ate on this journey, it was in Goatlandia, at a small village festival. It was gray, it was wobbly, it tasted faintly of old shoes and regret. The locals called it grumble fluff. Section 9, Homeward Bound, Eventually. Reflections, regrets, and a recipe for blister cream. The final border, or rather, the point where I decided my feet deserved a holiday. From me. It wasn't dramatic, no fanfares, no suspicious goats, just a quiet road, and a bus stop. A beautiful, glorious bus stop. The thought of sitting down, for an extended period, was heavenly. My epic walk was drawing to a close. My shoes breathed a sigh of relief. Or maybe that was just the air escaping from a new hole. Looking back, it was a blur of mud, strange food, and confused officials. There were moments of sheer panic, like when I thought I'd lost my rubber duck. Crisis averted, he was just napping in a spare sock. There were small triumphs, like successfully ordering coffee in 3 different languages. Badly. but successfully. And there were many, many moments of utter bewildered confusion, usually involving local customs, or cheese. What did I learn from this grand pedestrian experiment? I learned that maps are often optimistic, that chickens can be very judgmental, and that the world is full of tiny hats, in unexpected places. I also learned that my capacity for eating questionable food is surprisingly high, and that waterproof is a very flexible term.